senior researcher with the Conflict and Crisis Division at Human Rights Watch, and she joins us now. Thanks so much for being with us, Belkis. You know, it's always problematic to carry out executions because they are so irreversible by nature. And in Iraq, it sounds that they're now being rushed. So in the context of Iraq, I mean, does that make for an effective deterrent, or does it just potentially put what could be innocent lives at risk?
I think that it's an extremely important point that you're making. In Iraq, the trials that we have witnessed, that I have sat in on for the last 5 years, are so fundamentally flawed. They rely on confessions extracted by torture. They do not rely on any proper evidence being introduced into trial. And most of these people are being prosecuted and convicted without any proper defense. The state appoints lawyers, and these lawyers do not even bother to speak once during the trial. So in Iraq, when you have someone convicted of a terrorism crime and sentenced to death, honestly, there's absolutely no way of knowing whether they actually committed the crime that they're said to have committed because of this systematic use of torture in order to extract confessions, even getting people to say things that they did not do. So this is extremely concerning to us, as it may be sentencing and executing innocent people.
Right. So, I mean, what are the chances of having this urgently investigated and addressed?
Unfortunately, the Iraqi state has made clear to us, to the UN, and to many other partners for several years now that when it comes to ISIS and the crimes of ISIS, they will execute. And they say that this is the right of the state. And they, as a state, have chosen the path of revenge. How do we deal with ISIS? We lock them up and we kill them all. And unfortunately, because of this choice to focus on revenge above anything else, there is no way of slowing down this train. As you said, you know, now we've got over 300 people who have been signed with a death warrant. So that means not only were they sentenced to death, but the execution will actually take place. And there are many more. There are thousands more people sitting in prison right now with a death sentence.
Okay. You know, there's another issue at play in Iraq that kind of gives one the feeling of a sense of lawlessness. You wrote a piece on disappearances in the country. I mean, in some cases, we're hearing about kidnappings for ransom. You said that the government had promised to do something about it, yet it sounds like in that realm as well, nothing has improved.
You know, this new government came in May of last year. They came in because the protest movement in October of 2019 toppled the old government because of the massive abuses that were being seen on the streets of Baghdad by security forces. This government came in with promises that it would prioritize human rights and the dignity of every Iraqi citizen, and that it would address systemic issues like arbitrary detention, enforced disappearance, and torture. Unfortunately, this government has not delivered. They're following the path of previous governments, and I think these announced death sentences, so the announcement that over 300 people are about to be killed, really speaks to the fact that this government is not interested in improving its human rights record, given that the trials that we're talking about that have ended up with a death sentence are so fundamentally flawed and lacking in human rights protections.
Okay, but just to be clear, though, in the case of many enforced disappearances and the kidnapping for ransom issue, these aren't necessarily terror suspects at all. These can also be kind of business people that are taken.
Absolutely. I think what we've seen since October 2019 with the protest movement is that basically anyone is up for grabs. And that's been a realization that I've seen sink in with the human rights community, with the activist community on the streets of Baghdad. They thought that they were sort of exempt from these horrific and abusive tactics by armed forces because they weren't Sunni Arab, they weren't being accused of terrorism. And then what they saw was actually, if you say something on the streets of Baghdad or elsewhere in the country that the security forces, that other armed groups don't like, they'll pick you up, they'll torture you, they'll execute you. And nobody's safe. And as you said, I mean, the people that we're talking about who are now victim to this wave of enforced disappearances, you know, a lot of them are regular people who are fighting for their rights to freedom of assembly and freedom of expression.
Okay, I mean, there's also this, it is extremely detrimental for Iraq because when you have this feeling of instability and lack of security, it hurts the country's overall development and an economy that Iraq desperately needs to fix. I mean, investors don't want to come in. And Iraqis that are already there that wanted to take the risks of being entrepreneurial, for example, don't want to take the risk because they could become subject, to some kind of disappearance if they run afoul, perhaps, of local authorities or militant groups. They will be at risk for trying to even create jobs or create, businesses really in the country.
Absolutely. One of the most disturbing recent enforced disappearances was of a young man, a guy that many foreigners knew in Baghdad. He was known for being a fixer for international journalists who came to the country, but he was also known for being a party planner. He wanted to bring life back to Baghdad, and he would throw these amazing parties that would bring together all sorts of different people and communities in Baghdad to enjoy a night of fun and try to shake off the more conservative aspects of life in the city. And he was enforcibly disappeared, has been disappeared for months now, with his family having no news about him, his family demanding that the government tell them where he's disappeared to. And we have no idea what's happened to him. And incidents like that really do, as you said, have this effect of minimizing the desire for anyone young, motivated with an idea for a company or an investment to spend time investing in Iran, because they feel like this is too risky. They would put themselves at risk and they would put their investments at risk.
Belkis, great to speak to you. Thanks so much for taking the time. We really do appreciate it.